full schedule, yeah, for sure.
Say yes.
We live? Oh,
Welcome, welcome. Halim Ali from the Heart Enterprises. Welcome to our third installation of Black Male Mental Health, Trauma, and Resilience. And before we dive in to today's topic and also preview what we've already discussed, I would be remiss if I did not introduce this esteemed panel of individuals and professionals. Well, I'm gonna actually have them introduce themselves. So if you can say your name, gentlemen, and the organization you're with, that would be appreciated.
My name is Theo Wilson, Executive Director of Shop Talk Live and Solution Squad.
Kenneth Crowley, founder, CEO of the Crowley Foundation, co-founder of the King's Council. Excited to be here today. Thank you for this platform, brother.
My name is Jason Vitello. I'm the Behavioral Health Coordinator at Denver Public Health, the President-elect for the Colorado Public Health Association, CPHA, and an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver.
yes, my name is Tyrone Beverly. I'm the founder and director of I'm Unique, a nonprofit organization that focuses on health and wellness and creating a culture of health and individual change and social upliftment.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, brothers, for being here. I honor the work that you all do. I respect you all as men. And just to give a brief synopsis of where we've been on this 3-month journey. Part 1, we addressed historical, multi-generational trauma, social and emotional learning theory, why Black men in particular face greater mental health challenges, intracultural phenomena disguised as culture being passed on through generations, and how the 3/5 compromise still affects Black men today, and removing cognitive dissonance. That was part 1. All right? Yeah, we unloaded. We unpacked a lot on that one. Part 2 was the recycling of trauma, the role it plays and the toll it takes upon our mental health, emotionally, physically, and to our spiritual well-being, the message it speaks to us, and the things it makes us believe about ourselves, and how that plays a part in everything we do, say, and how we deal with others. This installation, I wanted to bring it full circle. I wanted to look at the family. I wanted to look at the village, right? So with this installation of Black Male Mental Health, Trauma, and Resilience, Part 3, we're going to talk about the future. What it means to redefine ourselves as Black and brown men, what it means to reclaim our greatness, what it means to reclaim our wellness, and what it means to create our strength, and also what it means to create peace within the family. So with that being said, so many places we can go with this thing, and the research was endless in terms of how the family dynamic has been broken down. And we don't have enough time to get into all of the theories. However, one thing we know, elected officials have successfully passed legislation designed to reverse some of the damage done by centuries of slavery and decades of racial discrimination thereafter. Yet, new laws have not been able to transform African communities into well-functioning entities. And despite a very powerful civil rights movement that inspired political activists around the world, African Americans still find themselves the perpetual victims of our own self-destruction, our own self-destructive behavior. Drugs, crimes, violence, and chronically broken homes are plagues that no amount of sit-ins, demonstrations, and boycotts have been able to remove. So, what we'll do in true panelist form, I will, and this is a conversation, more than anything, with brilliant minds. This is a conversation, but it's the undoing and the solution to this global crisis. You are looking at the solution for this global crisis. The minds of us, of our men, because the minds of those who have previously been in power have failed us. Have failed us over and over and over again. So I'm going to ask, based off of your lives, not even research, but just living life, from being men, black men and brown men in America, how have you witnessed the breakdown of the family unit, mainly the black and brown family unit in America? What has been your experience with that, Brother Theo?
Thank you very much, Brother Halim. Listen, I happen to be from, this is a loaded word, but one of the last black patriarchies, it seems. Meaning that patriarchy, as we define it in Western social theory, is a problem. Patriarchy is the over masculine dominance of men in the household and society oppressing those who do not fit their description. But what I'm talking about is I happen to be from, it seemed like I was one of the last men who knew and had a relationship with my father and my grandfather. You see what I'm saying? My parents were married, and my father's parents were married, and his father's parents were married. You see what I'm saying? So that part was intact, and I felt like a unicorn. You see what I'm saying? Because what I witnessed is when I saw people, my mom and dad are still married, people looked at me like I was like, a four-leaf clover walking. You see what I'm saying? And that made me realize, number one, how unique I was. And number two, that doesn't solve everything.
Come on.
You see what I'm saying? That doesn't stop the transgenerational trauma. Specifically, I know that one of the things that I inherited was the fact that I live in a house of veterans. So I'm the first man in my bloodline not to have killed another man by the age of 25 in upwards of 100 years. This is a fact. You see what I'm saying? I was an artist born into a household of killers. And so what ended up going on was, though I was artistically inclined with drawing and poetry and music and whatnot, there was still that warrior culture to my household that was not always the most trauma-informed, shall we say. And so what I had to unpack was the fact that these men who are my heroes were also broken in a very, very real way. And I feel like it took me so long to have a family so that I could unpack all of that before I could, I'm about to be 40 years old with my first child being 6 months old. See what I'm saying? And it took me this long for me to unpack enough to create a safe environment for my daughter to be born in. I also think it's interesting that I was given a girl first, because I know for a fact that had I been given a boy first, I'd be, with my masculine culture, trying to inculcate him into being the warrior that I feel like you need to be in this black society. I'm in this society as a black man in America. What I feel with my girl is I can just love her. You see what I'm saying? I can just cuddle her and just love on her and set that precedent for child rearing should my son come along. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I witnessed. It's just because my household was intact doesn't mean that the men in that house were all the way intact. And so that's my experience.
Brother Theo, thank you for that wonderful address, brethren.
Yeah.
Brother KC.
Yes, sir. Theo, I too am a unicorn, brother.
Yeah.
You know, I'll call it a privilege. You know, I had the privilege of being raised by two parents. So I come from a two-parent household. Most of my friends on my block that I grew up in a two-parent household. But a block or two over, a lot of my friends grew up in a single-parent household or was raised by their grandparents, right? So while my family dynamic was intact or appeared to be intact, people that were close to me didn't have that same privilege. And just like my brother Theo, even though, you know, they were together, we still had trauma that we were dealing with. The funny thing about it is, you know, when you grow up a certain way, like have you ever heard someone say as an adult, we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor? Mm-hmm. So I'll use that same analogy and say, you know, we were in trauma, but we didn't know we were in trauma.
Come on.
Like I didn't recognize it until I got older and started dealing with some things that men deal with, kind of like what my man Theo was talking about as it relates to, you know, he wants to have a family, raise a family, but he has some unpacking to do. So we are aware of these things as adults, right? And so, you know, one of the things that stood out to me in my upbringing, and, you know, again, like Theo, there's things that I needed to do or that I wanted to do for my family, for my son specifically, that wasn't done for me as a child. And it's just three simple words. I love you. My father never told me that. And I didn't realize the impact that it had on my life until I got older and I had a son. And so I told my wife, this is one of the things that I need to change. So I think we need to just be able to acknowledge where those breakdowns are, but then be able to make the change for ourselves and for the next generation, right? So that's a little bit in terms of my upbringing and how I'm still trying. I'm not gonna say I'm able because this is an everyday challenge. I'm still trying to, you know, break those chains and kill those stereotypes as a black father.
That's what's up.
My man, thank you, brother. I appreciate that account. Mr. Vitello, please.
When I was 17 years old, I was in a very tumultuous, conflictual high school romance. And one day my girlfriend turned to me and she said, I'm late. And I said, what do you mean you're late? I drove. Oh. I came from a two-parent home as well. And I noticed that a lot of my friends who were in similar situations would completely disappear, remove themselves from the situation. And I think it was the fact that I had a father in my life, and I knew how important having a father in my life was for me. You know, when she said to me, I'm gonna have this child, and you can help me or not. And I went totally old school with it. I married her and joined the Army.
That's old school.
And I was 21 years old when she left. So I spent several years as a single father. And I like to say that my child and I grew up together in a lot of ways. I literally had someone looking up to me, trying to learn how to be a man by watching my every move. So that question around what does it mean to be a man was one that was very, very salient from a very, very early age. It required me to unlearn a lot of things that I had learned. And I think as a result, a lot of my work has centered around masculinity, male mental health, and fatherhood. And speaking about fatherhood in particular, I don't think anyone would deny that we find ourselves in the midst of a fatherhood crisis, right? And father absence, a lot of researchers would say that father absence corresponds or correlates to more adverse outcomes for children than any other, right? So teenage pregnancy, suicide, drug use, addiction, incarceration, and on, correlate very, very highly to father absence. But when we talk about father absence in the social and political discourse, we have one narrative, and that's these deadbeat dads need to step up, they need to man up, pay their child support, and take care of their kids. And I really believe that's a very exaggerated social construct.
Yes, sir.
When in actuality, we have countless men who would like nothing more than the opportunity to be involved in the lives of their children.
That's it.
But are impeded very often by a gatekeeping mother or an inhospitable at best, if not outright hostile, family court or human services system. And, you know, again, I mentioned my work in male mental health. Men account for 80% of everyone who killed themselves. That's one man per minute, 510,000 men globally per year. They're twice as likely to become addicted to substances or to die of an overdose.
Come on.
This starts early too. 75% of all expulsions, grade failures, or disciplinary interventions in school systems are for boys. 75%. They account for about 75% of the chronically homeless. 80% of everyone arrested for a violent crime is a man, and 93% of all prisoners are men.
Come on, brother.
Halim, you mentioned the village, right? We like to say that it takes a village to raise a healthy child, but I don't believe our villages can be healthy if the men are not present or not well. I gave a talk once in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on fatherhood and father absence, and at the end of the talk, this older black woman stood up, and she identified herself as a radical feminist all the way back to the 70s, and she said, you know, she was emotional. She said, you know, I feel in many ways I waged war against men for much of my life. And now I feel, we told men that we don't need you. And I feel like the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. It turns out that families do need their men. Children do need their fathers. And guess what? Fathers need their children, and men need their families. So a lot of my work is really focused on helping create that healthy village for all of us. Thank you.
Beautiful. My brother, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful account. Mr. Beverly, talk to us, my brother.
So for me, I grew up in that single-parent home you all spoke of, and some would consider it a state of poverty. Some would consider a state of scarcity. But I came from my mother first, before I was in poverty. And my mother was a privilege to have her in my life. And what I've learned from her is resilience. I've learned from her to be a warrior of love. What I mean by that is at the age of 4 years old, my mother was abandoned by both of her parents on the streets. And all her siblings doing all that they can to survive, the oldest being 7 years old, and trying to navigate through this world alone. And then getting taken into the foster care system and being abused, split up, and abandoned. So when we talk about the absence of family, they had none. And what I learned from my mother one particular day, we were at the $1.50. I don't know if y'all remember the $1.50 back in the day on Peoria.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And we just came out the movie theater, and it was, you know, at that time it was Bloods and Crips all day long, banging. And that night somebody happened to get shot, and while they were shooting, everybody ran. And I talk about this state of warrior of love because what my mother demonstrated on that night was, that was the moment I knew the power of love and her willing to sacrifice her own life for mine. Because when the bullets began to ring out, she ran in the direction of me to cover up my body. So if those bullets came my way, they would hit her first.
Ooh.
And
That's powerful.
And that became my foundation for what a family should be. And we talk about the absence of fathers, which, you know, I grew up in a single parent home, but she showed me the love that was needed to be able to improve whatever situation or circumstance I found myself in moving forward. And that's the way I stand on, and that's what I live on, not making any excuses, not saying it's a problem, but saying this woman loved me, and she told me how to love, and I just want to do the same. for anybody within my reach.
Come on, man.
what's
That's
up.
beautiful. Right on. Right on, brothers. Brethren. From the book, The Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the very bottom of hardships. He felt the weight of his ignorance, not simply of letters, but of life, of business, and of the humanities. The accumulated sloth and shirking and awkwardness of decades and centuries shackled his hands and feet. Nor was his burden all poverty and ignorance. The red stain of bastardy, which 2 centuries of systematic legal defilement of Negro women had stamped upon his race, meant not only the loss of ancient African chastity, but also the hereditary weight of a mass of corruption from white adulterers, threatening almost the obliteration of the Negro home. I wanted to read that quote before I ask the next question. Where did the institution of marriage begin to lose its merit and its value? Where did the institution of marriage begin to lose its merit and value? And I'll say this, statistically, 50% of all marriages in America end in divorce. So my question to the panelists, where did the institution of marriage begin to lose its merit and value? Brother Theo, please.
Well, some say it was at the end of the civil rights era, during the time in which we were advancing in society, at least American society. You had the advent of the welfare state at that point, the rewarding of men not being in the home, and coupled with the rise of that radical feminism that you talked about. That's traditionally blamed on that. But what I will say is that the idea of marriage never lost its value. It was the practice of it. You see what I'm saying? People still value the ideal of marriage. But there's a couple factors that led to its deterioration. The first one, I feel, is that when women began to understand that they didn't have to take our crap for 50 years, you see what I'm saying? They didn't have to put up with abuse and adultery. When they became to work in the workplace, to a certain extent, they weren't as dependent. A lot of those marriages that lasted a long time were based on dependence. You see what I'm saying?
Real talk.
And we don't want to acknowledge that. There was a lot of times when women literally did not have the option of divorce. And in this Judeo-Christian society, divorce was frowned upon. So I think that the ideal of marriage has never lost its value, the practice of it, and that's one factor. But the other factor is that I can tell you that in the black community, the black male was economically debased at that same time period. You have a situation where even when in the height of Jim Crow, we were married like crazy, right? But one of the things that was a factor in that is that at least in a patriarchal society, there was a place for a man to earn money. I can tell you that one of the things that kept me from actually settling down was I did not feel secure enough to hold that mantle of man in the household financially.
Come on.
So when you had the deindustrialization of the black community, these black men worked in these factories by the millions. Joe Jackson, terrible guy, but he raised 9 children, you see what I'm saying, on one income, right? That was the overall overarching economic standard, even for poor black folks. You deindustrialize the male of the household with nothing but a shadow market of drugs and crime that had always been there, but you were expected to evolve out of that and at least get a job at the meatpacking plant, at least. When that's gone away, then you have the deterioration of the financial basis of marriage first. And then you have the sociological fallout of what looks like a broken home, but there was no way to earn money for that home when the traditional breadwinner has been deindustrialized. So that's what actually took place. And we're looking at the late 60s going on into the 70s, which was also the time when they began to increase the sentences for drug crimes. At that very same time, this is all detailed in the book, The New Jim Crow. You can read all about that, and it's been valid. Everybody knows this would happen, so that's the time period. But the ideal of marriage is still sacrosanct until you look at shows like The Bachelor, in which we can talk about that sociological phenomenon as well.
Right on, Brother Theo. Appreciate you, family. Mr. Crowley, how you feeling, my brother?
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I'm jealous because I didn't sit in the first seat.
You good.
Now I got to change my answer. No, but everything he said is right, once again. And, you said this is a conversation. You want us to be real and speak from my own experience.
Please.
So that was a good history lesson. So I'll speak from my personal experience. So marriage is obviously sacred for me. I said in my opening statement that I came from a two-parent household, right? Now, as we start to talk about the trauma that I alluded to, I didn't find out until my father passed that I had other brothers.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I have a step family that I didn't learn about until my father passed. So we talking about mental health, but I'm still getting back to the sacredness of it, right?
Yes, sir.
So as it relates to me and my siblings, I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. All of my brothers have been married. My sister has never been married, but they're not married now. They're all separated. Some are divorced. So I'll say, from my own experience, the sacredness of it, when I got married, that was a road that I vowed not to go down, right? Just because I knew the significance of it, I knew the importance of it, I knew the history that came with the divorce rates that you were talking about. I knew the trauma that comes with it when the parents separate or the divorce, and I didn't want to put that trauma on my children. And so I had to do everything in my means to keep the family unit together. Now, was there some fussing and some fighting? Oh, yeah, you're damn right. I mean, we're talking about relationships. Nothing's perfect at the end of the day. But again, if we're going to talk about the sanctity of it and the trauma that comes with it and, the separation of the black families, but at the same time, we're talking about building legacies, right? If we're talking about we have children that we want to be responsible for, right? We want to talk about what message am I sending, right? How does that look for the next generation? Yes, every one of us up here are in positions in the community, right? So now we have the responsibility of our biological children that look up to us for leadership, guidance, direction.
Yes, sir.
Counsel, wise counsel.
Come on.
You understand?
Yes, sir.
But we also have a whole community of people that are looking up to us. So when you're in a marriage, just it by itself is hard work. You have children that you're responsible for. You want to give them good examples.
Yes, sir.
My son just got married. He's celebrating, I want to say 2 years in October. And we had this conversation. I was like, bro, is this what you want to do? He's like, man, I don't know. Like, you set the bar so high.
Wow.
And I was low-key offended because I thought I was doing my job. I didn't know I was putting pressure on my son.
Yes, sir.
You understand what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword, And, like I said, there'll be 2 years in October. Thank God for that union. But when we have young people looking at us in these positions, we have a responsibility to lead by example. We have a responsibility to lead correctly. We have a responsibility to be open, and we have a responsibility to share the bad with the good.
Yes, sir.
So my kids know when I'm mad at my wife, they don't always see us lovey-dovey. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you got to give them the rawness. You got to give them the real, and again, that's a conversation that me and my son had. Well, how do you deal with that? How do you get through that? What do y'all do? Because I'll just shut down. Well, bro, I shut down too. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yes, sir.
the power to be authentic is real when we're talking about leadership,
Come on.
right? And marriage, again, if you have a family, children, that's leadership. So how does that look for your children? How does that look for the next generation? So just being able to be open and honest, right? We have, these stigmas in our community. What goes on in our house stays in our house, which is probably why I didn't find out about my other brothers
Yes, sir.
until after the fact.
Wow.
And that shit was traumatizing to me. And my family still don't want to talk about that shit.
Wow.
Excuse my French.
We good.
But that shit hurts. And so, yeah, so just as it relates to the sanctity of it, I think it's still there. It's still desirable, right? And it's so desirable that people who are not will try to come and take what's yours.
We ain't talked about that yet, have we?
So let me take my jacket off then.
Make yourself comfortable.
Because temptation is real, right? And people want what you have. And let's just speak on that because we are talking about the sanctity of it. So again, are you going to value it or are you going to throw it away?
Yes, sir.
We are in the positions to break down the cycles, break down the chains, right, that have kept us bondage for all the years before us. It's on us, right?
Yes, sir.
It's on us.
You're right.
If you, like I mentioned, my pops didn't say I love you. Well, that's easy. I just tell my son I love him. We can recognize what traumatized us when we were young,
My man.
right? But we also have the power, the understanding, the wherewithal, the spiritual knowledge to change the trajectory, bro.
Yes, sir.
We can do that.
Come on. Yes, sir.
I'm done.
All right. For now, anyway. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate you. Mr. Vitello, talk to us, brother.
I don't think marriage is difficult at all. I've done it often.
Come on, man.
See? Authentic.
Yeah, I've been married twice. Full disclosure. And there's little I can say that would add to what's already been said. I appreciate your remarks, Theo. The institution of marriage was an institution that oppressed women for thousands of years. And we live in a world now where they don't have to put up with our bullshit for 50, and that's a good thing. And I think it raises the bar and causes us to want to be better and learn how to treat our partners better.
Yes, sir.
And so maybe I'm jaded, but when it comes to marriage, like I don't need a judge or a pastor or a piece of paper to tell me when my relationship begins or ends. But getting to the core of your question, I think is the sanctity of relationship. And I think one of the things that I think really afflicts relationships, including marriage, is capitalism, where from the moment we are sentient, it is the role of thousands of different corporations to convince us that we're not good enough and we're not happy, right? Even when we are,
Man.
right?
Come
Showing
on,
us
bro.
things that we didn't know we wanted.
Ooh.
So you're sitting at home watching the game, and the tequila commercial comes on, and it's like everyone's in Vegas at the bachelor party except for you, and now you're looking at your woman in sweatpants and feeling a certain kind of way, right? And it's pervasive, and it's like this idea that you're always measuring the person that's with you. Like, are you the partner that I'm supposed to have, instead of am I the partner you're supposed to have, right? And I think if both people are asking that question, we would see stronger relationships.
Man, that was a lot. Right on,
That
brother.
was good.
Appreciate that.
You know what I'm
Appreciate
saying?
that,
Drop the
Mr.
mic.
Vitello. Mr. Beverly, talk to us, please, sir.
I agree with everything I've heard thus far in terms of marriage still being something worth fighting for. However, I don't think a lot of people see the value in it anymore as though they used to, because there was this dependency, and now it's been promoted to, you can do this by yourself, so why not do it by yourself and make yourself happy? And I think if we're not careful, people begin to define our reality. And when they begin to define your reality, they can tell you what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy. And one thing that Edward Bernays did a really good job at is propaganda. And he began to mentally bring ideas into people's thought process and their psyche and tell them how they should be valued and how they should not be valued. And when you equate that to the car companies, that this is not a man if he does not drive this car.
Wow.
So now you begin to say, well, I have to pursue my life differently. I have to try to obtain all of these possessions to acquire your love. And if I don't have that, then I'm going to compromise what we have. And in the process of doing that, I may commit a crime and I get caught. And now I'm incarcerated because of that crime I committed by trying to love you.
What?
And now that begins to create this cycle of so many different problems that we're not even aware of, but psychologically we've been manipulated to do exactly what they wanted us to do, because they created and defined our reality for us, and they defined our love for us, and we lived up to their expectation.
Come on, man. Bro, come on, man.
And we've never had a chance to say, this is how I want to love you, and this is how I want to be loved. Is that okay with you? And it starts with being able to communicate, and that's one thing that we lack. And once we understand that we have to change the language of love, and we always can't allow people to put seeds in our minds. And, you know, when you think about thoughts as dynamites, if someone puts a thought in your brain and it blows up everything that you have inside of you, and that's when you begin to act a certain way. Because you're blown up inside, you're hurting inside, you're imploding, and it shows by what comes out of your mouth. And I think those are the things that we have to put more time into, is being willing to put forth the effort. We say, is it love, is it marriage? But we can look at society and we can say, you know what, the kids are no longer playing outside like they used to. Why is that? Is it the games, or is it the effort? Is it the interest? So I think we're losing interest in many different things. It's not just marriage, we're just losing interest in things that we don't have value for anymore until it gets taken away. Oh, we can't go outside anymore. Now we want to go outside and play.
Come on, man.
But for years and years, we never want to go outside and play because we lost the value, and now we get it back once it gets taken away. And sometimes that happens with love as well. Once I lost her, I wanted her. Once I lost him, I want him back. And I think we have to be honest with each other to be able to have those honest conversations on saying, this is how I want to love you. This is how I want to be loved. Is that okay with you? And we mean it when we say it.
I pray
Definitely.
that our virtual audience is listening, because I'm being transformed as I sit here by you brothers' testimony. Thank you. Powerful. And it was so much that was just said. In preparation for this panel, I talked to one of my mentors. He was actually on the first panel, Lee Hawkins. And when I told him the topic, you know, because it started off to be the destruction of the family unit. I mean, it has some very negative connotations. And he said, look, Brother Halim, and it's to your point, he said, what we must do is to begin to define our own terms. We have to stop letting America define our terms, because what family may mean to you doesn't mean the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, our vision of family from an African perspective is village. It's village. It's not the family unit. There's no such thing as a family unit from an African perspective.
Facts.
It's a village.
Facts.
Right? But in this westernized civilization context, it's a unit. It's very individualized. It's very me and mine. As long as me and mine are good, I'm not worried about what happens to you or yours. Now, So I wanted to share that because you're absolutely right. We must begin to define our own terms and control our own air.
Say it twice.
And control our own air. What's happening? So now, in Celestine Prophecies, the author talks about relationships, right? And I've lived by this for about 10 years. So he talks about relationships, two people entering relationships as half circles, looking for the other half to complete them, right? And he says, ultimately, a power struggle ensues because one person is trying to tame the other person to their purpose, right? So he says, the ideal situation is to complete your own cipher, to complete your own cipher and come together with someone who has completed their own cipher, and then create that which is exponential. Right? To create that which is exponential. So I had to speak to that based off of relationships because you brothers are bringing it. So, in 1960, only 9% of children were raised without their father. Yet today, a quarter of American children are raised without their father. The family structure influences the choices that children will make. Controlling for race and parental income, boys raised in particular without their father are much more likely to use drugs, engage in violent or criminal behavior, go to jail, and drop out of school. Girls, meanwhile, are more likely to engage in early sexual activity or have a child out of wedlock. Children without a father in the home are even more likely to suffer from mental health problems as adults. Children without a father in the home are even more likely to suffer from mental health problems as adults. All right? So when we look at all of the violence, especially the gun violence that's going on in the Denver metro area, I'm not talking about in Chi-Town or Atlanta, I'm talking about right here in our beloved city, brethren, right here. What's going on with our youth? And not only that, but what is it that we need to do as the elders? What is it that we need to do, like my brother Kenneth Crowley said, as those who these youth are looking up to? So I'll drop that on the brother Theo.
Yeah, that's what's up. You know, just because of the cycle that we've been doing, I would like to pass it down to brother Tyrone, and maybe we come back.
Let's do it.
Way. Yeah.
It's a conversation.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, brother.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
We'll come back down here.
My man.
Can you hit me with that question one more time?
So when we look at the statistics, brethren, in terms of when we say boys raised without their father are much more likely to use drugs, engage in violent or criminal behavior, go to jail, and drop out of school. Girls, meanwhile, are more likely to engage in early sexual activity or have a child out of wedlock. Children without a father in the home are even more likely to suffer from mental health problems as adults. So my question was, in this current statewide or citywide climate in terms of the gun violence that we are witnessing from our youth, where is it that we as community leaders or influencers, where is it that we have either dropped the ball, or what is it that we need to do to pick up the ball to be better models of behavior, better models of right conduct, right? What are the things that we may need to do in order to fix or help fix the problem that's happening with our youth right now?
That's a great question. a great, really, like that's a really, really important question to answer and to ask. And I think that we're talking about hundreds of years of dysfunction. We're talking about not knowing how to disagree healthily. We don't know how to disagree. And I think that's one of the most important things that we need to focus on is how can we disagree and still get along? And oftentimes if we disagree, then I don't like you. And that's what we do publicly. And then we begin to ride that wave of violence because you no longer agree with me, so you become my problem. You become my threat. And I think as adults or youth, I think that's been our culture for so long. And then we begin to say it's about the youth, but it's really about all of us.
Come on.
I think we have to we have to quit saying it's youth versus adults and say it's all of us contributing to the problem.
Wow.
And start having a different narrative on how we show up and we begin to model because they have a different set of fights that they have to fight every single day that we never had to, that we may not be able to relate to. When I was in school, they didn't have social media. They didn't have the bullying going on. So the expectations that we have for ourselves can't be the same expectations that they have as well because they have a different set of lived experiences that we never had before. And I think that plays a part in some of the violence that we see, in addition to that's the only outlet they're familiar with. And if you don't have a different way to express yourself, that becomes what you do because that's normalized in the culture that you live in, and that's what we begin to do. And we don't have a different way to show up. We haven't put anything out there that shows in a still masculine way, this is how you dissolve situations that may present itself as a problem. And I think culturally it's easy to manipulate us. And what I mean by that is Uncle Tom. When I say, how many people in here consider themselves to carry the spirit of Uncle Tom, how many people raise their hand? You know, we've been lied to for so long, and we swallowed the pill of lies, and we haven't digested that. So when we think about Uncle Tom and people say, wow, he was a sellout to black people. Actually, he sacrificed his own life for the two women in the book, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, so they can survive. And then you realize you do a little bit more research, then you find out this was actually based on a real person, which his name is Josiah Henson.
Come on.
And he wasn't subservient. He used to help out. He used to help those who were in bondage with him. He would give them extra rations. He would give them food. He would give them clothing. He would give them things to make their living condition a lot better.
Come on.
He would not chain them when they traveled. And we believed that he was this subservient, white, loving person. And eventually, he ended up escaping and taking his family with him.
Come on, bro.
And then he went back by foot and freed over 130 people. And that's never the story that we were told. But we think about Uncle Tom as being the sellout. And oftentimes, when you want to help your people and you want to do it in a respectful manner, and you might say, let's dissolve this situation, you're going to be looked upon as soft. And if you looked upon as soft, then you're weak. And anything that's weak gets destroyed. And like Uncle Tom, he has so much compassion, it ruined his entire legacy because of it.
Wow.
And when you see yourself in this society and you're looked upon as weak, then you take on that spirit of Uncle Tom with the negative association that's associated with him, not realizing that you were actually the hero of the people.
Come on, man.
And I think that's where we are in the society that we're living in today.
So we almost have to recreate the narrative.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
We have to recreate the narrative. Thank you, my brother. That was powerful. Mr. Vitello, would you like to follow that account? The angry guy at the bar. Come on, holla at us.
Yeah, some of you have heard me say that I set out long ago to be more than just the angry guy at the bar. Sometimes I still am. That's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah. Thinking about how to answer this question.
Take your time.
Years ago, when I was a therapist, I was a therapist at a program called The Rock, Recognizing Opportunities for Change, and I was working with juvenile probationers, and I was sent to a training on systemic trauma. And I wasn't sure what the training was. It was Dr. Kenneth Hardy. He's an African-American therapist and academic. And back then, everyone was talking about trauma. And I believe, I've heard it said, it's probably an overstatement, but I appreciate the sentiment. If we are honest about trauma and all the ways that it shows up in people's lives, the DSM would be a pamphlet. And when we talk about trauma, very often we think of an event, right? Or a singular episode or experience. In the DSM, to get a diagnosis of PTSD, you have to, right, there has to be a criterion event in your childhood, for instance. Well, what if your criterion trauma event in childhood was your childhood? And we know that there are entire communities where people experience not post, but pervasive and persistent trauma from the day they're born. And that's what Dr. Hardy was talking about. And he was talking about young men of color in particular, and how we live in a society of hierarchy. And at the very top of this hierarchy is the white, able-bodied, upper-class Christian male, and at the bottom are people of color, Black, indigenous people of color. And at the same time, like, we as men all receive the same messages from a very early age about what it means to be a man, right? We have the conceptualization of the self-made man. That's where we're at now. Conceptions of masculinity have shifted throughout history. But right now, the self-made man in the post-industrial age of capitalism is what men aspire to be, for the most part, right? And this is a masculinity that's measurable. I can pit mine against yours, right? I can measure my manhood against your manhood by how much money I have in my account, what kind of car I drive, how many women I'm sleeping with, and how much power I have over other men, right? So all men and all boys are socialized to feel entitled to this evidence of your manhood, but only certain men have the means to access that, right? And as a result, young men of color especially, and very often in urban centers, internalize what he called rage. He said it's not even anger, it's rage. And they have no vocabulary or context that they can articulate this, right? But all they have is their body, the shoes on their feet, is why, or their respect, right? And for them, when you have nothing else, death is a small price to pay for respect. And I will kill you, or I will die, right? And it's rage. And that's what this talk was. It was probably 200 white psychologists and social workers who were getting an education that they didn't intend on getting. Some of them were uncomfortable. But he was putting lyrics to the music that had been playing in my head my whole life, right? So every break, I'm pulling him aside, I'm asking him questions, I'm on the edge of my seat. One white woman raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, but I thought we were gonna be talking about trauma." And I'm like,
Is that what she
right?
said?
Yeah. And he was like,
Sit down, come on.
he just looked at her and he smiled. He's like, well, I have been. And he said, I'll say this. I have a lot of friends, Black and white, and they say, "Dr. Hardy, why do you talk about race so much?" And he said, I talk about race so much because you don't talk about it enough, right? like Cornel West says, right? With style and a smile.
That's it, baby.
And I'm watching this whole thing, and at the very end, he opened the floor for questions. And I don't even remember my question. I raised my hand. It was some technical question about like therapeutic intervention.
Yes, sir.
And he says, "Brother, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Okay." He said, "How do you feel
Come on, man.
right now? How do you feel right now?" And 200 white psychologists turn and look at me.
Come on.
And I have a lump in my throat. And I'm like clenching the mic and I say, "Rage."
Ooh.
Yeah. Come on.
Ooh.
And he said, "Good,
Come on.
Yes.
good, brother."
Come on, family.
He said, "That rage got you over the wall, but there's a lot more of us on the other side. You use that rage for them." And it's the first time in my life that, why are you so mad?
Yeah.
Why are you so angry? right? Because I'm paying attention. Why aren't you more mad, right?
Bars.
And that's what I've been trying to do is use that rage and channel it in a healthy and a productive way. I think we need to acknowledge the rage that our young people are experiencing and give them positive ways to channel it and express it. That's pro-social, right? So for one, that's what we're already doing, right? We're serving as examples of what a man can be in our community. It doesn't have to be the dope dealer or the gangbanger.
Come on.
You can do what we do, right?
Come on, brother.
And we also need to change systems. I'm less interested in helping people beat the odds. I'm more interested in trying to change the odds. And so like the public health approach, the work that I'm doing now, public health for public safety. I read an article in the New York Times in 2016. It was August 2016, about the problem of violence in Honduras. And you know, Honduras is one of the most violent countries in the world. Murder rate, violent crime rate off the chain. And their approach has been similar to ours, right? Cops, courts, and cages. We have this belief in the criminal justice system, this false belief that you're either an offender or a victim. In actuality, the vast majority of perpetrators of violence were victims of violence themselves.
Come on, bro.
Before they ever hurt anyone else, right? But by the time you're getting treatment, you're being treated as part of your punishment, right? Your trauma is not being treated. So in Honduras, in different vicinities and jurisdictions, they decided, why don't we incorporate a community-based public health approach and divert some of this fund? Why don't we defund the police a little bit and invest in different types of programming, right? Trauma-informed, culturally responsive mental health and substance use addiction treatment. And these are men and boys for the most part, right? Pro-social programming and employment programming, right? So these young men, they're waking up early, they're going to work, and they're making a living wage.
Come on.
They're getting treatment for their trauma. And at night, they're playing soccer together, right? And places where this was implemented, the violent crime rate dropped by over 60%.
Wow.
You know who funded that?
Who funded that?
United States government.
Oh! So they could do it in other places, but not here.
Right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, my brother. Very moving, very passionate. Mr. Crowley, how you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling great, man. Shout out again for putting this together.
Yes, sir.
I'm really having a good time up here. I think the first thing that we need to do is the people who are actually doing anything needs to take care of themselves.
Yes, sir.
Right? And we've had this conversation amongst the council. You're no good to anyone if you don't get help yourself, right? So we need to make sure that, like this right here, this is beautiful, because we have to have these spaces. We have to have these platforms where we can come together and share and talk about mental health and trauma,
My man.
right? So that's number one. Anybody that's doing any type of work, community, you work with young people, anything, you cannot serve effectively until you deal with your own self, right? You got to take time, do some self-care days, find you somebody to talk to, get you a brotherhood or a sisterhood that you can bounce your problems and your stress off of, go talk to you a therapist, pick up some new practices. So that's definitely first. And then also, I don't know if there's one answer.
Definitely not.
But I think that's the problem, because everybody wants one answer.
Yes, sir.
And everybody thinks they have the magic bullet. Everybody thinks their answer is better than their answer.
Yes,
You
sir.
know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And one thing that we do as it relates to, trying to fight these problems is understand that, we're trying to serve young people or whatever our demographic is. We're serving the next generation, but we're also fighting systems.
Come on.
Right? So we need to understand how to play that game. right? So it's more than just going out doing this or going out doing that. You know, we need, you know, allies at the state representative level, right, that are not afraid to say that this shit is wrong. And so while we're doing that and doing those things and building those relationships, we also need to look at this behavior that these young men are mimicking is being modeled somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So you said that there wasn't a man in the house. Somebody's influencing them,
Yes, sir.
right? So we can just blame it on the dad not being in the house. Okay, that's cool. Well, if the dad's in the house and you still running amok doing foolishness, well, now I got a problem with the dad. Is the dad gangbanging?
Come on.
On the low? Is the dad selling dope? On the low?
Come on.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So these young people are not ignorant. They're very intelligent. They're very smart.
Come on.
They're very knowledgeable. You know, social media is not our friend as it relates to how information is spread through that generation. Now we can move through, because I know right or wrong.
Come on.
I'm not gonna see someone making it rain and that shit does not impress me. I'm not gonna go spend my whole paycheck in the club.
Come on.
I'm just not gonna do that.
No, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
No, sir.
I'm not gonna spend my whole paycheck on a fat gold chain.
Period.
You know what I'm saying? I like Jordans. I haven't had a pair of Jordans since I was in high school. I'm not spending $125 on no Jordans.
I've never had a pair. Let's keep going.
And we trying to get a college fund
Come on, brethren.
or save your money to start a business.
Come on, brethren.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So these are all problems, part of the problem too. But we need to change our mindset and our focus in terms of what's really important, right?
Yes, sir.
So we need to be present. We need to provide options, cool options. We need to make this shit look cool.
Right.
Is that
Right.
what we need to do?
So if we make it look cool, then maybe they'll stop doing the dumb stuff that they're doing and say, wow, like I can really put on for my community and people will like it. You know what I'm saying? Like we just can't say, here, bro, learn this STEM. You got to make it interesting. Right? Here, bro, come on, you like engineering, right? You cool with math, you love numbers. We got to make it interesting. Not only do we make it interesting, we put people in front of them that look like them, right? So we can't say, I got these 20 black youth from the hood and we're going to take them downtown to this white institution and there's no black people there.
Come on, man.
We're talking about opportunities, right? We're talking about access. We all have the access. We just need to be smart in how we, share it and who we share it with. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes.
And again, the leadership has to be intact. So if there's some young person that's lost and the mom just hears about Joe Blow helping kids, but she doesn't do her homework on Joe Blow. Joe Blow is the dude that's selling drugs to your son.
Come on, bro.
Right?
Come on. Yes,
So not only are there people that's working, you got to do your due diligence on the people that's working.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And so, we talking about the breakdown of the family. We're talking about there's no males in the home. We're talking about why do these boys do the things that they do? Where are they modeling it from? Social media. The male either in their house or in their influence. And what we do, what we offer, what we're trying to pull them away from or sway them over here to our side, we got to make it attractive.
Yes, sir.
Put some bread in their pocket. You know what I'm saying? Make this learning shit cool. Make this mentoring shit cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's cool to help people, bro. I can show you how to do it. You know what I mean?
Stop, man.
So I'm done.
Hey, bro. Come on, man.
This is definitely the coolest panel I've ever been on.
Hey, brother.
You see what I'm saying? You see?
Yeah, y'all brothers making it look real
Let's
cool
just make
right
it
now.
cool, man.
Yes, sir.
You understand? Swag don't have no expiration date on it.
Come on, family. Yes, sir. Come on. All right, Mr. Theo, what you got for us, brethren?
A people perish without a vision.
Yes.
That's just what it is. And that vision that we lack needs to be so compelling that it draws us away from the BS, not just chastises us from going toward it.
Yeah, man.
And what I find is that we as a people are exhibiting the same psychological woundedness as those who colonized us. Healthy people don't do manifest destiny, y'all.
Come on.
Healthy people don't enslave people. Healthy people don't create a corporatocracy that destroys the ecosystem. Healthy people do not create systems that oppress women and children and create global sex trafficking networks. That's not what healthy people do. We keep on modeling our behavior against those who made us sick. And then we sit up here wondering why those who wounded us with the knife won't perform surgery on us with that same blade. You see what I'm saying? The first part of healing is getting away from your damn assailant.
Say that.
That's the first part of healing. And until we do that, the people are going to literally model the behavior. Amos Wilson has this great book called The Psychology of the Black on Black Criminals, one of the last books he wrote before he died. And he talks about how in the absence of a masculine black model on the plantation, the only most powerful male model was the massa himself. And that's still the case today. It is the white male violent patriarch that sets the tone for black male violence. Why do you think these kids call themselves Capone, Noriega, got pictures of Scarface all over the place? It's because white male violence is the model for power. Don't believe me? Go to the movies and watch the trailer and see how long you go without somebody gloriously whipping out a gun.
Yeah.
Just try. Just try. The gun, the vigilante, the armed ass kicker is literally the model for power. If you go to ancient Egypt, the empowered object is the ankh. It's in everybody's hand. The gun is the ankh of the Western world.
Come on, man.
It's literally the inverse opposite. It is a death maker, not a life maker. You see what I'm saying? And no matter where you are in this toxic ass culture, at the top or the bottom, you will be poisoned by it.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened with integration was that we ended up losing control over the norms of our society. Back then, and since the plantation, it was just the black church. Black church was everything. You know what I'm saying? It was the center of movement making. It was the dating supply. It was literally where the rec center, churches had basketball rims. It was where you learned the mystery schools of music and public speaking through oratory. You see what I'm saying? The black church had it all for us. When we got absorbed into the consumer culture of America, that's when we started really figuring out, oh wow, I am poor, didn't know it. You see what I'm saying? That raise that you talk about, remember MTV's Cribs?
Yes,
That's
sir.
when it bit into me the first time. Number one, because I was a rapper, and I knew I was better than Ja Rule. The first time I knew, I'm a rapper, and I'm definitely better than Ja Rule. Why does he have this?
Oh, man.
Why do these girls think this weird-looking dude is hot? Because he has this object that I don't have, and I'm inadequate because of it. And I remember that without the influence of my father. Now, I talked about the brokenness, but I need to talk about the power of this. The good thing about my daddy is that he was a gangster. An actual gangster from Brooklyn, part of the Diplomat set, the original Dip set in Brooklyn. You see what I'm saying? So he understood gang stuff, and I could not go for it. I couldn't. I wrote a little article that I never published, said, my daddy hits harder than you. All these little hood cats, that's what's up. My daddy hit harder than you, and he feeds me. So, you see what I'm saying? Without that influence, that rage would have overtook me into violence. We are sick, and we are swimming in sickness, and wonder why we keep vomiting. These kids are vomiting. So we need a new vision. I don't know if it's Wakanda forever. I don't know what it is. But globally, black people are in a quarantine. We're a black, I swear I wanted to say this to the African Union so badly. There was not a place on earth where a black man can slit the throat of another black man and it not benefit a white man somewhere.
Yeah.
That is the nature of the global colonization quarantine that we are under. Whether it's Kingston, Jamaica, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, or Compton, Chicago, or Park Hill, you can't kill another black man without it benefiting a white man somewhere. And so now that we know that, there are only two options, I feel, that are before our people for 7 generations of health down the line.
Whoa.
And that's reparation or separation. I don't think there's the opportunity. And I'm talking about this with like pain in my heart.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this like with great white friends. I'm talking about this like having been invested and gifted through my talents through white society. Reparation or separation. Because of the fact that either you give black folks the full measure of what they need to build the institutions that pull us away from this violence, or we need to get away from them in some type of way. And I don't know how there's going to be a middle ground to that, because I'm hearing the same conversations I heard in the 90s. When we was kids, that was the first time the crack game and the dope game had really took over, right? Now these kids are doing the same thing. So we as leaders must define a compelling vision that looks like health, because I'll say this last thing I'm gonna say, nobody ever learned to fly by watching shit fall. You have to study what works to find working models. The Wright brothers didn't look at rocks dropping off a cliff, they looked at birds taken to the air. You see what I'm saying? So we need to find working models that work and focus our attention on that for the sake of our children, or else don't be surprised when the cycle repeats itself the next generation.
Yo, I need a commercial break.
I was about to say, drop the mic.
However, we don't have the luxury of that right now. But y'all brothers. So I heard something from each one of you guys that really provoked something deeply in me. What the brother Theo just said. I was watching an interview with Muhammad Ali, and he was being interviewed by a white journalist. And Muhammad was saying the same thing, basically. He said, we don't want equality. He said, because you've given your dogs equality, your dog could eat off the same plate as you, your dog could ride on the bus. We want space to solve our own problems.
Yeah, man.
He said, because equality, he said, what good is equality? You still own everything.
Yeah.
Well,
you still own everything. We need equity. We need a stake for our future generations, because what if you go broke? What if you lose your mind? Then we are still dependent upon what you have and what you're willing to ration out to us. So I wanted to say that to you. And also, when we talk about the ankh in Africa being the gun in America, my girl and I were having this conversation about Adam and Eve, which came from the story out of the Pert Mharu from Tatu and Ani. And they walked in the garden, but Ani gave Tatu the fruit of life. But see, in Adam and Eve gives Adam the fruit of death. These are the parallels. We don't deal with death, my people. We are the authors of life.
Come on, man.
This is where we're from. So those are two things that you inspired that I wanted to share. My brother KC, you said something in terms of systems
Yeah, man.
that we're fighting. Our dearly beloved, righteously guided forefather, Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, he taught us the difference between mobilizing and organizing. And he talked about how Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer, right? But not a great organizer, where Malcolm X was a great organizer and a great mobilizer, because everywhere Malcolm went, he left an institution of learning. It didn't take an incident to happen in the black community for Malcolm X to start rallying. No, he was going after the system that continued to perpetuate these situations that happen in the community.
Come on, man.
So when Trayvon, got murdered, which I think was one of the initial outrages in the community, everybody was mad. for about a month.
Yeah, that's it right there.
But some of us kept going. Some of us was going even before that happened. Some of us was fighting way before that. Some of us was fighting way before George Floyd. So I've been outraged. It's like Nelson Mandela said, it wasn't one point in my life where I decided to be a revolutionary. It was 1,000 slights that led up to this moment, to this time. So brother, I wanted to say that to you, and also with the self-care that you were talking about, KC. I was on a trauma-informed training a couple of weeks ago, and the facilitator said something that was so important about self-care. He said, we can have 100 things, 100 victories in a day. We can have 100 victories and one thing go wrong. And we will focus on that one thing that went wrong. Woo. And he said, self-care says we need to focus on those 100 things that went right. Mm-hmm. So we can't, so let's stop beating ourselves up in that way. So these are self-care tools to know. You know, I mean, we did the interview, shout out to 9 News for the interview the other day, and out of all the accolades, there was one person who hit me like, yeah, now that you're rich, I guess you care. And I was like, you know, I said, I'm spiritually wealthy, not rich. I said, I was actually homeless less than a year ago, sir.
You don't know my story.
Right.
Sir. But it kind of irritated me, and I said, no, brother, we're not going to focus on this one negative comment or this one negative individual, right? We're not going to be defined by his energy. So I wanted to say that. To my brother, Jason Vitello, so you said something that made me think about step inside the circle. You were talking about the criminals actually once upon a time being the victims, right, of crime. There's a YouTube video that I would like to guide the viewers to called Step Inside the Circle. And this video was done in a California state penitentiary where all of the men, 250, 300 some odd men, went outside in the yard and they formed a circle. The facilitator got inside of the circle and she performed the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, right? Which is 10 questions. And this is called the ACEs quiz. You can look that up as well. And she said, it's 10 questions. For each question I ask, if this has happened to you, I would ask that you take a step toward the circle. Were you violently hit as a child? Everybody stepped in. Was there an adult in your life that slapped you or, right? Everybody stepped in. Was there a parent in your life that went to jail? So the circle just kept getting smaller and smaller. And what we realized at the end of the video is that almost all of these inmates had suffered some type of early childhood trauma and at some point had been a victim, right, of crime. Okay, so I wanted to speak to my brother Jason Vitello on that. And to my brother Tyrone Beverly. Yesterday, my MBK mentor called me Mr. Michael Simmons. And he said, look, brother, he said, we've talked about safe spaces. He said, we've talked about safe spaces. He said, but now I need you to create brave spaces. We need to go from safe spaces to brave spaces. We've created an environment where conversations could be held, real conversations, and safe spaces, right? But a lot of times, you know, these passive aggressiveness, I guess the covert racists have a place to kind of hide, to kind of get some comfort. But no, we have to create some brave spaces. I need you to be charged with a certain duty. I need you to go out and be proactive, right? I need you to take what you say you feel and do something with it. We don't need your pity no more. We don't need no more pity, right? What Bob Marley say? Old man River, don't cry for me. I got a running stream of love, you see. I don't need your pity. So we need the world to stand up behind losing our kids We need the support of everybody because everybody
Come on,
has
man.
helped create this problem.
They found $1 trillion.
Come on, man.
They did.
I mean, found.
Oh, look at that.
You know what I mean? Like, how do you find $1 trillion? And it goes back to the systems, like my man was saying. That's the control that they have over us, right? Oh, you doing good work in the community. I got $1 million, but I'm only gonna give you 2,000. And not only am I only gonna give you 2,000, I'm gonna make 15 of y'all fight for the 2,000. Tell me that ain't a system, man.
There you go.
Tell me that's not a system, but you can find $1 trillion.
I think, so now we're in an interesting moment. Well, we got Black Lives Matter painted on front of the White House lawn, right? And we got every NBA player acting like they was always down with Colin Kaepernick.
Appeasement.
Taking a knee, right? There's a great momentum in the air for symbolic, should we say, reparations. Symbolic solidarity. What is coming to the forefront is the fact that, number one, we need to direct this into real things that create tangible change. And two, the acknowledgement that those who have been called black people, because you know all of this is a construct in the first place, have been at the foundation of the creating of this entire world. The slave labor that built the American economy was the economic equivalent of building the Great Pyramids. It is a monument that will never be duplicated. See what I'm saying? That's what we're looking at. Like, global capitalism has its foundation in, number one, the genocide of the indigenous.
Come on.
And number two, the enslavement of Africa's indigenous across the water.
Come on.
Now, what needs to take place is understanding that, and I had a weird vision about this. Can I share my vision with y'all?
Please share
Of
your
course,
vision.
please.
I learned about the creation of a butterfly from a pupal state. And what they said was that the butterfly, when it actually pupates, fully dissolves into liquid. It actually, if you were to cut open a pupa of a butterfly, goop would fall out. It would not be solid. It's not like the butterfly had wings, the caterpillar had wings already inside of it. It dissolves completely. And from the complete dissolution of the old structure of the caterpillar comes things that the caterpillar would never dream of. Capabilities that it never knew it had latent inside of it. And it began to dawn on me that what if this world that we're looking at as it dissolves is right on track?
Come on.
What if this is right on track? What if we're right on time as a species? And I'm talking about from the collapse of democracy, global capitalism, and the environment. What if all of this is the evolutionary catalyst that we need to create the world that we want?
Come on, man.
Historically speaking, it will be black and brown folks at the forefront of whatever the solution looks like.
Yes, sir.
So what I think that the mindset shift needs to be is that we are on track.
Yeah.
As bad as it looks, as much as forest fires blot out the sun, as much as hurricanes crush on the Gulf Coast of America, we're on track.
Yes, sir.
If we actually take the right actions right now, because we're at a place where we've never been technologically as capable and socially as willing to, number one, stop the world. Coronavirus showed us that. And not only that, but have the ability to change and regreen the world. India and Kenya showed you
us that.
You see, I was inspired by a woman named Wangari Maathai. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. She passed away in 2011. She started the Green Belt movement in Kenya. Kenya had been deforested due to the harvesting of their forest land for the colonial economy. And she planted 30 million new trees. 30 million new trees. Before she died, there's over 100 million trees planted now. And when she reforested the environment, the water table rose in the ground. That meant that there was more water for the hydroelectric dam. which created more electricity, which when there was more rainfall, which created more rain for the harvest crops like the mangoes and the bananas. You see what I'm saying? We're at a place right now where we actually, like, the most important thing, see, this is a vision that came from my queen. I just got to give Dora a shout out, an African woman that I have chosen to link my life with. You know what I'm saying?
Come on, man. That boy felt that.
Shit, man.
Come on, man. Show that.
She pushed out that child.
Show that, bro. Yeah, that's real.
She almost died, bro. But what she gives me is that one of the things that I do with my mental health is I catastrophize a lot. I see catastrophe where there's just a slight, and I create. And I'm saying that her mental exercise, she taught me not to catastrophize and to actually see the larger picture.
Come on.
And the larger picture starts with looking at my assets, what I have to address the problem. We've never been more equipped to address the problems that we're facing than now. And I think that from that asset-based mentality, we look at how to not only correct our problems, but lead the way. Whenever we come up with a solution, it has to lead the way for a world that looks like 7 generations from now. My daughter don't got to look at a dying planet, but a world that is increasingly thriving. And they are mixable. They do commingle. And I think that's the solution that we look like. But first, we got to figure out maybe we're on track to where we need to be. That's what I think it needs to do.
Ooh, boy. That's dope. I like that. Before you go into the thing,
Go ahead, brother. We ain't going.
you said something that hit with me. You was talking about the 7 generations, and I thought about this statement from Les Brown, and he said something along the lines. I might be wrong, but he says that a man leaves a legacy for his children's children, and his children's children's children, not for his children. His children's children, children's children. You know what I mean? So we got to start thinking so many years ahead. You know what I mean? I'm having these conversations with my family right now, and I'm trying to put my son on something, and he was like, "Oh, what is that?" I said, "Generational wealth, baby." You know what I mean? So back to the, spending money on the foolishness. We got to really start being intentional, man, with how. What we want our legacy to look like, what we want our legacy to look like, right? We start today. We start today. We can break all those chains, right? We can break all those systems, but we got to start thinking generation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get you some life insurance.
Facts.
Yes, sir.
Got mine.
Period. Get you some life insurance.
Come on.
Leave something for your kids. And then teach them how to use it. Give them the tools. Get you a will. Give them some stipulations in the will. X, Y, and Z. We're not doing nothing foolish. Buy you some land. Plant you some trees. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Feed the land, baby. I'm done.
Come on, brother. Mr. Vitello, what you got down there? We just talking.
We just talking.
We just talking, brother.
It's good, though.
I'm good, man.
You good?
Yeah.
Brother Tyrone?
I was just reading Brother Casey's socks there, man. I don't know if y'all can see the socks. Made me think about something.
Don't start on my side game.
Oh, you were.
No, I really appreciate it. It actually made me think about something. I was in a conversation years ago with a man by the name of Jimmy Spirit. He's a drummer. He used to play with many different people. He had a relationship with Jimi Hendrix. He had a relationship with Coltrane. And he talked about all his travels and what's wrong with society. And I started thinking about that brother's socks.
Talk about them socks, man.
And why that came up for me is because what Jimmy Spirit said.
Yes, sir.
He said our problem in society is everyone's walking around full of defecation, they're full of shit. In a literal sense, when you think about our toilets, they're too high. So we are full of waste, and we don't even know how to use the restroom properly. And we have a body full of waste that wants to come out. And they haven't even educated us to do that. They've stripped that knowledge away from us, and we're getting sick because of it, literally. So we are full of shit, literally. We are full of waste, and we don't even know how to use the restroom, but we're talking about all these additional problems, and we haven't even conquered that battle just yet. So that's what those socks made me think about. And then we think about the brother, you know, that brother might have had a fighting chance. Maybe that was a contributing factor to some of the issues. People are facing colon problems. People are facing constipation. They're facing so many things that are preventable because we don't have the knowledge.
Man.
We go to school for 12 years and we don't even know what a zip code is. Like, what is a zip code? We went to 12 years. I asked many people, what does zip code mean? And I rarely get an answer. Zone improvement plan. We can break that down a little further and really go in depth, but most people aren't provided the information on how to move as a human being. We're taking away the human aspect of being a human. And then we begin to assimilate to what Theo was saying, to a sick society. And assimilating to a sick society will never make you well. And that becomes the expectation. And one thing that comes up for me is, if a tree is worth more dead than alive, then a human being is worth more stressed out, depressed, insecure, defeated, because now you can pay for someone else to fix you. And
Come on.
and those are the problems that we have in our society that we need to start discussing more of. And the world continues to create our reality. They say, you're pain, you're heartbroken, you're not enough, you're not worthy, you're not good enough. Sit down and let me tell you how to get there. As though you're not there already. And then you begin to have this sense of doubt that plays a toll on you even using your own voice. You don't want to speak because society might not accept what you have to say, but yet society tells you to be real and authentic, and the moment you do that, they shut you off.
Come on, man.
So we're playing against so many different things. Like Casey said, man, it's not one answer, and it never will be. And I think we just have to keep an open mind and continue to do our work every day and just know that it's a practice, it's an effort, and we have to learn how to disagree. And I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
I talked about relationships. We talked about gangs, right, earlier, but I don't think it's really about gangs. I think it's about relationships.
Yes, sir.
Just from my personal experience.
Yeah, man.
My uncle was murdered by somebody that he knew. Relationship. My grandmother was shot 5 times. You know, so when we think about the people that we're in relationship with, how do we begin to dissolve the problems that we may experience with each other? And I think those are the things that we need to put more emphasis on so we're not hurting each other in the process of trying to heal. Oftentimes we go into these circles and we say, let's have a healing circle. And then somebody leaves, I didn't like what this brother had to say. Or, I didn't like this sister. I didn't like that. And it actually perpetuates the very problem that we say we're trying to eliminate because we don't even know how to communicate in a healthy manner. So the language is such a barrier that we don't, sometimes maybe we shouldn't speak. Maybe we should just sit in silence and be in each other's presence and absorb the energy. You talk about the self-esteem prophecies, and that's really what it was about, is being able to pay attention and be able to tune into something that is real without even being spoken about.
That's it.
And to begin to absorb your environment on an energetic level.
Wow.
And that's what came up from them socks, brother.
Yo.
One time for the socks.
Oh, man.
Yes, I appreciate the socks.
Whatever I
brother.
can do to
appreciate the
influence you,
socks.
brother, I appreciate you.
Yo, Ty.
No, go ahead.
Listen, you said something that hit me so hard because it's been the final piece in the puzzle. You just gave me the final piece in the puzzle that I've been trying to articulate for a long time. A tree is worth more dead than alive, but we're not looking at the system of valuation that values that tree dead in the first place. We have an economy, and I don't care if it's capitalist or communist, socialist or whatever. It's commodification. The commodification on something divine as a tree. If there's no trees, we can't argue about race. There will be no oxygen to do so. You see what I'm saying? We have to figure out a new economic system, a new system of valuation. That is another form of wealth that we need to look into, because even when we talk about leaving generational wealth, and I think about this all the time, that was part of the thing that stopped me from actually having a family until I actually got, it took a TED Talk and me having a speaking gig that was like for me to feel financially comfortable.
Yeah.
Enough.
I can dig it.
It took till then, right? But still, why scarcity? A scarcity model of value, a commodification of the natural world. And then through that scarcity, we fight, we wage war. We need to have, and literally there have been small scale experiments to do this on local levels, to create economies based on time rather than money, the thing that a rich man and a poor man have in common. See what I'm saying? The 24-hour day. There's ways to actually value that and trade that. There's ways to encrypt it in the same blockchain technology that supports Bitcoin, right? But I haven't been able to say it in a way that is just so succinct and clear. A tree is worth more dead than alive, and a human is worth more sick than well. Whoa. See what I'm saying?
Whoa.
It's the valuation system, and one of the things that we have to do if we're going to create, and I mean, the climate has been on me tough. The climate's been on me real tough, right? Is the fact that it is now time to engineer the solution. That the solution will be as much as engineering as it is feeling. You see what I'm saying? To recreate a mathematical system that values the tree more alive than dead.
Wow.
That rewards humans more well than sick.
Of course.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a way to quantify that, trade and inherit that, will incentivize what we need to actually heal this world. But we've never had more technology to do it, and do it right and do it fast than we have right now. And that's the mindset that I'm forcing myself to take when I look at these problems.
I love that.
This is the alien invasion that we need. Let's say no extraterrestrials come down. The climate crisis will be that alien invasion. The thing that forces humanity onto one accord. That puts these things into the background. And in fact, in working through that, we will have to work out these problems. You see what I'm saying? But that's the world that we need. And we need to start with a new valuation system.
Come on, brother.
They want us sick. They want to keep us sick because there's no money in the cure.
Come on.
The money's in the
The
medicine.
money's in the medicine, bro.
So that's why they keep us sick. Because if we got a cure, then all hell's getting ready to break loose.
I know, right?
On our side, and they don't want to see that.
That's right.
So they keep us sick for that reason.
Modified poison.
Can we have the cure?
Right. Right.
We have to realize that this isn't new.
Right.
Of course.
In the 1930s, there was a book called 100 Million Guinea Pigs. And that book is predicated on the experimentation on people and being able to put their bodies through some of the harshest conditions a human can experience. And no one is liable for what happens to them. So years ago, as Theo talks about vision, I think that's probably one of the most important things that could be said, is to have a vision. And what is our alternatives to the situation that we find ourselves in today? What is a real viable alternative? I'm not going to call it a solution, but I will call it a viable alternative until we reach a different frontier to move in a better direction. And years ago, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman by the name of Jack Fresco.
You met Jack Fresco?
I went to Jack Fresco's house, and Jack Fresco is he's the creator of something called the Venus Project. And one thing I heard KC talk about was capitalism. Or one of y'all said something about capitalism. and this brother, this man, he designed something called a resource-based economy. A resource-based economy is being able to look at the resources that are readily available to the human on Earth and be able to allocate those resources to the humans that live on this planet. And we do it as a collective. And he designed different vehicles, and I got a chance to see all the models at his home. He had helicopters, airplanes, trains, a variety of different things. And he says, we designed these cars back in the day. We had green cars, they were clean cars, and they were safe cars. And he says, today we have cars that have a seatbelt in it, and they have a bumper on the front and a bumper on the side. Let me ask you a real logical question. What happens if you get hit on the side? Where's your safety? There is none. And that's the kind of society that we've dealt with. Is we've built a society that's not really safe from all angles. And depending on where you get hit, it's going to increase the damage that's done. So he said, let's do something like this. Let's create this magnetic force across the entire vehicle. And the way that he designs the magnets, they come close to each other and they repel. In addition to that, if it beats the magnetic force, it goes in. He designed something called nitinol metal, which is classified as metal memory. So with enough heat pressure applied, it reconstructs itself to its original configuration. And that's the way that he was modeling vehicles and cars and trying to make sure that people weren't compromising the integrity of their life because they're trying to pay for the insurance, or they're trying to pay for things that are going to make them decide on whether I'm going to be able to afford food for my children. And the insurance companies began to call and said, don't ever let this man go back. He was on Larry King. Wow. And they took him off Larry King. He can't go back on the air because of the information that he's disseminating is changing the minds of the people. He's making people think differently, and it's working. We can't have a platform for this kind of train of thought because we cannot run the lives of the people that we want to run. So then he was ostracized and he was outcast, and he was on his own, and he began to build different platforms and just educate people on how to live differently within this system, this society that we are up against. So are we ready to have that conversation? If we're talking about what is a viable alternative to capitalism, is a resource-based economy a viable option? And if so, how can we begin to move in that direction? If we're not really talking about the vision, then it becomes an empty conversation. But it might not be the solution, but let's talk about these viable alternatives in the process of doing this work.
Yes, sir.
Man.
Yeah, I do got the meter kicking, I don't know if that meter is
And you
close.
know what? Whoever gets a ticket, we will definitely take care of that.
Oh, well then, let's get it.
I promise you. However, we do have only 7 minutes left, and I knew that this dynamic panel would have a lot to offer to our viewers and our audience. I would have to ask, are there any questions that we've received online? Okay. So with that being said, I want to take this time to ask each one of you for our audience that's viewing, how can they find Theo Wilson?
TheoWilson.net, Theo Wilson 31 on Facebook, and hopefully when the world comes back, you'll find me right there in your community, doing what I got to do.
Come on, right on, brother. Thank you. And how can we find Kenneth Crowley?
LinkedIn, Crowley Foundation, CrowleyCollegePrep.com. That's our IG as well. And Twitter, Crowley Foundation.
All right, thank you, brother. Mr. Vitello, how can we find you and the work that you're doing right now?
You can go to jasonvitello.com, Vitello, or just hit me at jasonvitello@gmail.com, or I'll be the angry guy at the bar.
See. Right on, brother. And Mr. Beverly, how can we find you and the work you do, sir?
You can find me at imunique.org. So that's imunique.org, or Tyrone at imunique.org.
My brother, right on. And in terms of From the Heart, you can find us at www.fromtheheartent.com. This has been Black Male, Mental Health, Trauma, and Resilience, Part 3 of 3. The future, redefining ourselves, reclaiming our greatness, reclaiming our wellness and our strength, and that's exactly what we've done today. So I would really like to thank my esteemed panelists. Y'all,
Thank
I'm
you,
emotional.
bro.
I'm emotional right now because you brothers showed up. And here's the thing. I love each one of you more than I did 3 months ago. When I see another black or brown man, or even a white man, or even a yellow man, I have more veneration and appreciation for human life than I ever have in my life. Right? Yeah. So this has been a further cleansing for me. This has been healing. So this is the work.
Yes, sir.
This is the work. And do we have any closing comments before we go?
I want to
No, go ahead. I'll wait.
thank you all for allowing me to be part of what really feels like a sacred space. And what came to mind throughout this conversation was, as a professor, an adjunct at the Graduate School of Social Work, and an educator, it gives me a lot of joy to inform social workers or public health professionals that a professional helper is not the same thing as a change agent. And what we talked about today were problems that are spiritual and existential in nature, problems that programs alone can't fix, right? Grant funding can't fix the problems that we're talking about, right? Moreover, the systems of care, including public health and behavioral health, very often perpetuate oppression and racism further by helping to maintain the status quo. And what we talked about today was anything but status quo, and I was honored to be a part of these conversations.
Yes, sir.
Thank
you. Brother Crowley, did you have some final
Yeah, this
words?
was definitely therapeutic for me personally. So again, back to just, an outlet for dealing with trauma is to be able to communicate and converse. Find you somebody that you can confide in and have that conversation. So this was definitely good for me personally. Number two, get you some help. Get you some help. If you watching, you listening, do not be ashamed to raise your hand and say, I'm drowning. All right? It is cool to ask for help. I know we talking about toxic masculinity, right? It's not cool to cry. It's not cool to be weak. But I'm here to tell you that it is cool to find you a counselor. It is cool to find you some brothers to talk to. And it is cool to open up and share your heart to somebody. So that's number two. And number three, last but not least, vote. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm telling you to vote, but I'm also telling you to protect your vote and make them earn your vote. Don't give it away. They got to earn it, period. I'm done. Thank you for this platform, brother.
All right. Thank you. Right on, brothers. All right, we good?
I'm good.
All right.
I just want to say
Please.
something to KC, what he had just said, brought a thought.
Please.
It's one thing that I've seen year after year, relationship after relationship. As we talk about finding someone to confide in and support, one thing that we have to say more of, if someone does confide in you, to respect the sacredness of that.
Yeah, man.
And don't abuse someone's vulnerability to be open with you, because that's where the pain starts. And we continue to do that to each other in such a harmful way. And we have to realize that if they thought you were that important to share something so intimate to them, then they value you. And for you to abuse that is a part of the problem. So we have to be mindful of how we utilize and treat and take care of someone else's hardships in the process of this healing.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you for saying that. They definitely got to be trustworthy.
But in the more yogic Ayurveda principles that I stand on, I think it's something to really to think about and to consider. Oftentimes people say they want to change the way they eat, they want to change the way that they live, and I want to ask you a question: like, what's the most complex aspect of eating. Oftentimes we'll say nutrition, we'll say what the meal is, the taste, the seasoning. But the most complex aspect of eating is the mind. And what you're willing to eat, it first is a thought that you're willing to digest before it even enters your mouth. So when you want to make change, you have to change what's going on up there within you. And I think that's where we have to do more work is our thinking and being able to sit in stillness, being able to turn off the television, being able to move in a space where we're not being distracted or manipulated by any additional outside forces, and being able just to absorb our own energy and sit in that willingly, and then make the decisions, not always being so quick to respond. Sometimes we just need to sit still and pay attention to what's going on a visceral level to say, this is what's going on for me, and not having someone else help inform our ideas of what the world is and what it should be.
Come on.
Thank you, brother.
And those are our closing words.
Yes, sir.
From my brethren. We have Theo
All
Wilson,
praises.
Kenneth Crowley, Jason Vitello, and Tyrone Beverly. And I am Halim Ali.
Give it
And
up for
this
your
has
host
been-
real fast.
D. Halim Ali.
Setting this all up, doing that hard work, whatever you have to
Right
do.
on, right on, guys.
Thank you.
Much love, Kings. All right,
Appreciate
we
you,
out.
baby.
I just want to say that
Look.
I do.
I got
something to say, too. It's just like, I don't wanna eat.
No, like no joke.
No, I gotta go though. I gotta go as well. I
respect
just want to. I didn't really show my appreciation and gratitude for this. So for me, as you see, I didn't take my mask off. You know, and I made it a point to say I'm not gonna go out to these events because I put everything on pause because I don't know what we're up against. And I know a lot of people are like, oh man, it could be fake, it could be this. I don't know. For me, I don't know the condition that we're living in right now, but I know that you brothers are doing work, and that's why I showed up. I value and respect the people that I seen, and I was like, I'm gonna show up with these brothers because I know y'all out here doing the work. Paz actually made the call, and because of the strength of Paz, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna be there, just because I respect the work that these brothers are doing. I respect everybody on this panel, and that's why I showed up. But this is not something that I've been consistently doing. I turned a lot of things down. A lot of people are probably mad at me for that. Me too. And I just want to let you know that I really value and appreciate. It's not that I don't value and appreciate what other people have going on, but I'm just saying we've been in the work for years, and I know that it's really for positive change, and that's what I'm behind, and that's why I showed up. And I just want to say thank you all for your willingness and showing up and being a part of this.
Thank you very much, man.
But I gotta go get this meeting before I have
All
you.
love, baby. There you have it.